everyone, it's Last Angry Geek. I just thought I'd take a few minutes to talk to you about Man of Steel, which I just saw yesterday. Wow. It was not a good movie. Not by any standard. It was kind of a mess. They really tried to reinvent the wheel, as it were, try and redo the Superman legend, tell it in a new way, and that's such a classic story. I'm not sure that was a good idea. I don't blame the director, I don't blame the actors, it was the script. This was a bad script from the start. This is the single worst Pa Kent in history. Again, no offense to Kevin Costner, wasn't his fault, just very badly written. A few years ago, many years ago, when I was in high school, I took a psychology class, and they showed us the movie Shine as an example of the causes of schizophrenia. And in the movie Shine, the dad is constantly saying that the young pianist will go on to do great things, it's going to be a great, huge star, but then he's also constantly saying, you can't leave the family, you can't leave us, you can't go. It's like, so grow, but stay. Those are conflicting messages, and that's eventually what leads to his breakdown. That's essentially Pa Kent in this movie. Every time we see his mother in the present day, she's saying, Clark, we always believed that you'd be ready to shoulder this burden of having these powers. We always believed you're going to go far. And then every time we cut back to his dad, he's saying, don't use your powers! Don't use your powers! So every time she said, we always believed you, I just want to scream, liar! The worst moment is he saves the school bus he's in from going off the road. He keeps all these kids from drowning. He says, what was I supposed to do, Dad? Let him drown? And he just goes, maybe? Oh my God, no! That is not Pa Kent. Pa Kent encouraged him to be responsible with his powers, but never to deny them, never to turn his back on people in need. That was not Pa Kent, okay? And that pissed me off more than I thought it would, because I've never been a huge Superman fan, but this was just terrible. And he dies! Pa Kent would rather die than let Clark save him and accidentally expose his powers. He's about to die and he just goes, no. I suppose this is supposed to be noble, but my God! How can you let your son live with knowing that he could have saved you? This is why Clark's running away from his life at the beginning of the movie. He's consumed by guilt because his dad fucked him up in the head so badly. Another big problem I had was Krypton. Krypton was always meant to be this mecca of science and technology, and then what do we see? Jor-El's riding a beast. It's fucking Avatar. He's got this winged dog he rides around. What? Another missed opportunity. They should have referred to the robots as Brainiac, because technically in DC Comics, Brainiac's from a different planet, but a lot of the Superman reboots have always maintained that Brainiac was the computer monitoring Krypton. I thought that would have been cool if they'd called it the little robots following Jor-El and Lara around Brainiac. As for the performances, I didn't really like any of the performances in this movie. None of them were very good. With one exception, Amy Adams. They nailed Lois Lane. That is exactly how Lois should have been. They did a great job. Amy did a great job. Lois Lane was always too good a reporter not to figure out who Superman was. So I liked, it was logical, and I don't agree with it. I don't agree with her finding out his secret identity right away, right in the beginning there. But it was logical to me that if Lois Lane put her mind to it, she could find out who Superman really was. So that was logical. That made sense to me. I liked at the beginning she's just not interested in dicking around with the guy from SVU. And, hey, Felix Gaeta from Battlestar Galactica was in it. All right, Felix. Yeah, no, Christopher Maloney from Law & Order was a colonel in this thing, and he was the typical jackass military guy who eventually realizes, Superman, you're our friend. But I liked how Lois Lane kind of stood up to the military right away, and she's throwing back the bourbon. You know, she's like the hard-drinking reporter. She just happens to be a woman. Amy Adams and the writers did a good job on Lois Lane. That is the one character in this movie that I liked. Perry, too. Perry was all right. Lawrence Fishburne did a good job as Perry. The Daily Planet was underused, in no small part because he doesn't become Clark Kent reporter until the very end. And I'm like, how do you just decide to be a reporter? Don't you need to have a journalism degree? Don't you have to go to college? He's been running around the world. But I can help people if I'm a journalist. They won't be expecting me to be a journalist. I can ask questions. I can find out things. I can get into dangerous spots and it'll all be logical. It's like, jackass! Clark Kent wanted to be a journalist. That's why he did it. Not because it was a good secret identity for Superman. This is very much the DCNU Superman. This is many years ago in the 80s when Many of you were just a twinkle in your parents' eyes. John Byrne, this was the last relaunch of the DC Universe about 30 years ago. John Byrne did a series called Man of Steel, and in it, he posited that Clark Kent was the real guy. Superman was just the identity he wore in the world. Grant Morrison with the DCNU, however, is going back to the old idea that Superman is the real guy, Clark Kent is just the identity. He's the alien living among us. He'll never fit in, and I don't really like that interpretation. In my mind, Superman is a human who just happened to be born on another planet. Superman is a normal guy who just can leap tall buildings in a single bound. But this is the DCNU version in this movie. So I don't really like the fact that he was just running away from his powers until he finally finds them, and then he comes back, and then, okay, fine. But then just at the end, then he decides, I'm going to be a reporter because it'll let me be Superman better. I didn't like that. Did not like that one bit. Also, this movie was over 2 hours, and by the end, I just wanted it to be done. And I didn't really get the ending. There was a lot about it I didn't understand. Like, at the very end, why was Clark's pod the machine that could destroy them? Why was this codex a baby's skull? I mean, that was a tiny skull. That was a child's skull. And why did they encode the DNA of their entire species into Clark if they didn't expect him to bring it back? Why did Jor-El do that if he didn't want Clark to resurrect his species? Like, well, it's up to you, son. Like, well, wait, what? I don't know. There were a lot of weird logic leaps that I just didn't make with this movie. By the end of the film, I just wanted it to be over. The fight scene's gone way too long. I mean, you can only watch somebody get punched and then fly like 50 miles so many times before it gets boring. Every time, grab him, run him into the ground for about 50 miles. Punch, he goes flying 50 miles. She's standing there, all of a sudden somebody backs it. You know, there's just so many times you could do the same move over and over again. There were a few nods I liked, like the fact that there was a giant mute guy, as well as the hot chick as part of Zod's crew, although she wasn't called Ursa. But you know, there were no Nostalgia Chick or Owen Citizen. Also, the ending. Let's talk about that controversial ending. No, Superman does not kill. I don't buy Superman killing, but then this wasn't Superman. I don't know what this movie was, it wasn't Superman. Superman has a strong moral code. He had good parents who raised him to do the right thing. I don't know who these people were, but they weren't the Kents. He snapped Zod's neck at the end. I didn't agree with that. He should have found a better way. But they wrote themselves into a corner because in this movie there was no kryptonite to depower Superman or Zod. There was no kryptonite. There was no, the red sun could take away his powers. No, it was air that could take away his powers. How stupid was that? Oh, the Kryptonian mix of gases that make up their atmosphere. Clark isn't used to breathing that, so it makes him weak. What? That seemed like a really lame way to get away his powers when you had things like kryptonite or the red sun. But then, of course, that would take away the Phantom Zone Kryptonians' powers as well, so they needed a way to make Superman weak while the others were still strong. I get that, but this mess of a movie was very badly written. It made a shitload of money, and everyone's saying, oh, it's going to be a DC movie renaissance. Bad movies make shitloads of money all the time. They've been doing it ever since Michael Bay. I'm not saying the franchise can't be salvaged, I'm just saying this was a very, very bad film. As for the performances, with the exception of Amy Adams and Lawrence Fishburne, I didn't really like anyone. None of them felt real to me, Pa Kent, Diane Lane, and Kevin Costner, they were just too mild. I kind of liked the scenes with Pa Kent and the young Clark. The kid playing young Clark, he was good. I'll give him that. He was good. He made me believe he's just all this anger, and he just wants to punch him, but he knows one punch and it's over. So he's got to just swallow his pride and anger continually. That kid was good. Henry Cavill, he just looked like a buffed out Tom Welling, Still got that big fuzzy hair and and that costume, man, that costume was terrible. It looked like he was wearing colored foil. It just kept shining weird in the light. It just looked like foil. And it's like, what? It's Jiffy Pop Superman. Michael Shannon, he was okay, but, nothing exceptional. I keep hearing he's such a good actor, but this one he was just like, I'll talk like this, then I'll scream! The woman who played Lara L was very good. Ayelet Zurir. I'm not pronouncing that right, I know, but she was good when she was trying to say goodbye to the baby, trying to let go of her son. That was emotional. That was probably the most emotional moment, and I really bought her grief. Russell Crowe, not so much. Russell Crowe was like, I'm going to look stoic and say my lines, and I'll have some action scenes too as this robot. And we didn't need him. We had Superman. We didn't need Jor-El as well. Not a great cast, not a great story. The fight scenes and stuff go on way too long. A lot of weird logic things that I just didn't understand. The whole movie is really about Superman earning the world's trust, and I guess he does that by the end, but in my mind, the story of Superman is the story of Clark Kent, how he comes to Metropolis to make his name and introduces Superman to the world. This story is about Superman being discovered by the world, and Clark Kent's an afterthought. And the effects were fine. No problems with the effects, really. No Lex Luthor cameo or mention. That was disappointing, too. That's what makes it so fun. Luthor has the supreme ego and intellect, and Superman has all this power, but the humility not to abuse it. Superman, don't go to see it. It's kind of a mess. I know a lot of people love it, and I guess I could see why if they're not very familiar with Superman. I am, unfortunately. Go watch the first couple of Christopher Reeve films. That's it for now. I'll see you in a month or two for The Wolverine. Until next time, this is Comic Book Issues, and I'm your host, The Last Angry Geek.